this is awesome. What a turnout. Cool. Thank you everybody for joining this week's Off the List session. A lot of new faces today. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining. Yeah, today we have Bobby. Bobby is
patience, please.
Bobby is a life and health coach and triathlon coach amongst all the things. And I'm very excited to have him here today to share some of his wisdom and expertise with us. Thank you for taking the time, Bobby.
Thanks very much.
I'm not going to give away too much about what he's going to be sharing about, but I mean, it's also on the screen. But yeah, thanks you guys for joining, and over to you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. It's actually great to see so many people here today. I think, we've obviously, the weather has changed a little bit in the last few days, and the weather is welcome, but I think being in Jeffreys Bay is great. So I'm going to try and work it from here, and hopefully it will work okay. Otherwise we're going to have to revert to something else. But basically today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 9 principles of the blue zones, and really, what they mean and what they're all about at the end of it all. Sorry, there we go. Okay, we're there. Okay, so really what I'm going to do is I'm going to look a little bit tell you a little bit about my story, where it comes from, and why I've pretty much got involved. And then we'll look at the blue zones and why they matter, the principles of the blue zones, and then just give you some of the stats, and then weave into it the whole thing of where health coaching comes into this whole lot. And because for me, I apply a lot of what the principles within the blue zones, I apply a lot of that within what I do as a health coach. So a little bit about my story at the end of the day is that as a 21-year-old, I ended up feeling really ill. I got to a point where I actually didn't want to eat very much. Because it was just uncomfortable for me to eat, and they diagnosed at the end of the day that I had a hiatus hernia. And so what happened is going around to many doctors to try and work out what was going on, and eventually I was referred to a surgeon who then did some fairly complex work on my stomach to try and reform a sphincter at the top of the stomach and get rid of the hernia so that I could actually eat something again. And that really is where I started my long journey back to health again. I basically read everything that I could on nutrition and food, and even at one stage tried being a vegetarian, obviously, and tried everything that I could to try and change the situation. The doctors at the end of the day actually wanted to reverse the surgery that they'd done because it wasn't working so well, and I just said no, because just to continue doing that, we hadn't had success in the first place. What's it going to do if we go further? So I chose not to, and I just kept learning. And eventually I found my way, and that way really had to do with lifestyle. And you'll see how that all weaves in also at the end of the day to the whole thing to do with the blue zones. So I learned through hard experience that it needed to be a more holistic thing, and hence come back to this whole thing of lifestyle. And today, being somebody who will be turning 62 years of age next month, I have effectively the health stats of a 25-year-old. I've never used any chronic meds and still don't use any chronic meds, so I'm very blessed in that way, but there are also other things that come along with that in terms of how you end up like that. I know I can still outrun most 25-year-olds, and I still compete triathlon at the highest level at my age, and at this age as well, I'm also starting a new career in this whole business of health coaching. I've taken pretty much almost like a 360-degree turn in the way that I look at things, from being a pharmacist, as a qualified pharmacist. I am a trained sports nutritionist, a gut health practitioner, mindfulness coach, and as I say, I am a South African tri coach. So there are a lot of those things which I bring to the arsenal in terms of what I can do as a health coach. But it all, as I say, links into the thing to do with the blue zones. So what about the blue zones? And I know a lot of you have actually seen a fair amount in the Netflix documentary and so on. And there's a brilliant book which I suggest you get to read. If you have a look at the movie, it's pretty good, but this is excellent. In fact, when I first found out about this about 7 or 8 years ago, I bought 20 of the books and gave it to 20 of the closest people around me because I believed it is so good. Where it comes from, this guy, Dr. Gianni Pace, actually Italian doctor, what he did, he was trying to look at this whole thing of these 100-year-olds who were surviving healthy around the world, and he had to look at it in Italy, and what he was doing, he had his map, and he was blotting these little blue things on where these areas were, and ended up with a blue blotch. And that's where you get the blue zones, where it originates from. But then Dan Buettner came into the story, and he's the one who's mostly popularized this whole thing, where he did a lot of work for National Geographic. And where Dan Buettner came in originally is, as a youngster, what he did is he did this thing of breaking, Guinness World Records by traveling on a bicycle across 5 continents. And then he decided he needed something bigger, something of value to actually do. And he convinced National Geographic to sponsor him for around about this 12-year period where he studied this phenomenon of 100-year-olds around the world who were living that long. They were still active in control of their faculties and, were still healthy. Most people these days who live that long live in sickness. In the first sort of 20, 30 years of our life, we're pretty energetic. The next sort of 20, 30, we're beginning to get tired and the niggles are coming in, and we're beginning to feel it. And then the last sort of 20, 30 years of most people's lives, they live unhealthy. So, what's the real thing about it? And this is where the blue zones also, as I say, come in and are so important, is that, these people, sorry, if I can just hit the P back there. I just wanted to show you for people who don't know. The blue zones, Loma Linda in California, USA, where the Adventists live, then Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa in Japan, where they were finding these groups of people who were living to 100 years and more and yet healthy and part of their community, active every day of their lives. The basic, what they call the power of 9 and the 9 principles of the blue zone, where we look at move, so that, move naturally. Then we look at having the right outlook on life. What is your purpose? Downshift your life. And we're talking a lot more about stress there. And then we look at the side of eating wisely. The 80% rule that the Okinawans and the Japanese look at. The plant slant to your diet. Wine at 5, which a lot of people will obviously, I think, find pretty good thing to have. And then the whole thing of connection. We as human beings need that connection. We need to have the right tribe to belong to. We need to keep our loved ones close to us as these people. These are the principles that they found were helping these people live to 100 years and older. And of course, obviously belonging, having strong social networks and your people around you. So the 9 lessons from the world's blue zones on living long and healthy life. And Dan Buettner and them look at it as the power of 9. So move naturally. We look at things that they had in their everyday lifestyles. Walking, the gardening, the housework, it was part of what they did. That's how they lived. And then these people also, they had purpose. The Okinawans call it ikigai, and the Nicoyans the plan de vida. Essentially, they know why they wake up in the morning. They have a purpose for waking up. And they found that added literally 7 years to their lives. And then we look at the thing of downshifting. The big thing in our lives today is the stress that we all experience. And what they have is they have these stress-relieving rituals. The Adventists pray. The Icarians nap. The Sardinians have their happy hour with their wine and so on after their work. What we do today, we have these things of meditation and so on. Similar kind of thing that we use today. And then the Japanese have this thing they call harahachibu, which is they eat until they're 80% full and then they stop, because it takes sort of a while before your brain clicks into the stomach. So you eat to being 80% of full so that you don't overeat, because we as individuals today, we actually way overeat in everything that we do, believe it or not. We think we need to eat that much and we actually don't. Sorry, I'm just battling with this thing again.
Yeah.
And we do, because if you consider, I mean, just having, that 300 gram steak that you have at the restaurant, you're literally eating almost all the protein that you need in a day. And most people eat more than that. Then we see that they had a plant slant. So most of their diets were based around these beans, the vegetables, fruit, and whole grains. And the problem with a lot of our whole grains today is that we actually have whole grains where they've taken the good stuff out. The sterols and those things, lipids have been taken out to extend the shelf life of the grain product that they're producing. And then they ate small amounts of meat. So it's not that you have to be a vegetarian. There are different ways of combining and doing this thing. And then the big thing for a lot of these guys is that they have this wine at 5. So you'll find a lot of them after they've done their daily work, they end up going to have this. But again, any alcohol, you must remember, has got to always be as they did, in moderation. But they also have wine and produce wine in a traditional way. No chemicals, no preservatives, none of those things added to it as we have with our wine. And another good thing about red wine, if you're going to drink it, is red wine is actually good for your cardiovascular system in small amounts. The resveratrol in there is very good. They also all belonged, or most of them belonged, to some kind of faith-based community, which they found added somewhere in the region of 14 years to their life expectancy at the end of the day. Human beings need the connection. It brings in that whole thing of your mental well-being and so on. And then loved ones first. We think, or we talk about this, but we don't realize how important that is. Those families there, where these people live to this, they had very strong, close family, and they kept their elders in with them. So learning from the wisdom of the elders, but also extending the life of those elderly people. You have somebody that you, as an old parent, you decide you're going to send them off to an old age home. You very often find that that's almost like a death sentence for a lot of them. Their lives are taken shorter. And then the thing of the right tribe. It's very important. We're social beings, and we need the bonds that we have with close friends and the strong social networks that we have. And they found that was what actually extended the life of many of those people. All of this stuff is obviously based on evidence. And, we talk about this thing of epigenetics these days, where people thought that the genes were the main thing that controlled what you had. And you actually find that only 20%, this Danish study that they did, and others that have actually brought this through, 20%, a very small amount, is determined in terms of your longevity and your health by your genes. Most of it is actually as a result of your lifestyle and environment around you. And people in the blue zones, and this is what's so important about this, is it was lifestyle. They weren't trying, and they don't try to be healthy. They are healthy because of the way that they live. And they've shown just how important and valuable this is. What Dan Buettner actually did is that in around 2009, he started this whole Blue Zone project. But what he did is that he tried to take the principles from there to put it into the different states within the United States. And what they found in like one of the first ones they did, that within 1 year, just applying those principles, there was a dramatic decrease in the cost of medical claims just by applying those principles. And 49% of the people in those areas actually had healthier lives within 1 year. And then one of the other big things in 3 of the Californian beach sites that they applied this, over a 5-year period, just looking at the obesity, smoking, health risks dropped dramatically. And the cost in terms of their healthcare was reduced by somewhere in the region of $12 million. And what we take from that is the fact that, we look at it always when it's happened, and we try and treat what's happening. We don't prevent it. We've got to get to that point and see the value in what these people are doing. And what Dan Buettner has now done is they've got at least 42 blue zones around the USA that they've actually set up. And what a wonderful thing if we could look at something like that in South Africa as well, where we could, start doing this kind of thing. So some of the stats, just interestingly, is that the top 3 causes of death in the world globally are cardiovascular disease, cancer, and diabetes. South Africa is not very different from that. We have exactly those 3 again. We also have a fair amount of problem with TB and HIV. But all of these things are lifestyle diseases, mostly caused by what we're eating, and particularly the high sugar and carbohydrate diets that we have today. And that most people are, because it's interesting, you ask people, talk to them about eating, and most people say, no, we eat well. And then what we do is we say, okay, let's have a look at it. Just write it down for a week. Come back to me. Let's just look at the stuff. And it's absolutely amazing how simple things you just change, and you can pick up on that. that people, they may think they're eating well, but very often they're not particularly eating well. Around 70% of the world's populations are actually overweight and obese. And again, that goes back to the whole thing of the carbs and not understanding. It's not to say you don't eat carbs. Carbs are very important, but eat the right carbs and in the right combinations and in the right way makes a big difference. The health authorities around the world also indicate that that non-communicable diseases, obviously preventable things that we can control, cause the majority of deaths and will continue to increase, as you can see in the huge thing that they propose and this is taken from international statistics. We need to get into the position that we prevent that, and we actually have that opportunity. Over 80% of the illnesses are preventable, and that's what causes the majority of the medical costs around the world. I mean, if you look at the American situation, 84% of their medical cost is as a result of things that they could have prevented. And we don't have as much money as they do, but it's not a very different picture that we have in this country. So, where does health coaching come in? What is health coaching all about? We look at it from a preventative perspective. We look at lifestyle and primarily look initially at how you eat, what you're doing, and we look at this thing we call blood sugar balancing. So we try and keep your carbs as level as possible. We try and reduce the impact of the insulin, which spikes your sugar up, and then the resultant pull down for the cortisol. So you end up with those spikes and troughs, and that's what causes the damage on a chronic basis. That's what causes the majority of your illness at the end of the day. And if we can simply control that, we help you with your weight, we get your illness generally under control, and people live far longer and healthier lives if we can just do those simple things. So we take a holistic approach, and that, as I was discussing a little bit earlier, mentioning to somebody, is that, for me as a pharmacist, that's where the 360 for me has really come in at the end of the day, is that we generally treat in the medical professions, we trained to look at the symptom and deal with that. You need to actually look at the source and go back to what the issue is. And for me, coming out of the area of clinical research, where I was working with bringing medicines into the market, you can understand the conflict that I've had over many years. I've managed now to get through that because I no longer am involved in that. But the other things we look at that are really important in the holistic approach is this thing of stress. Every single time I've coached people, that stress, it'll always generally come up. Along with that comes sleep, and we don't understand with sleep how important sleep is. There are so many things to sleep and the impact that it has in so many different areas. Simple thing, people think they go to bed at night and they sleep and the room's dark and you're okay. There are lots of other things that we can show you and help you with that are so important. We look at activity. You don't have to be a super athlete. As long as you're walking, as long as you're getting your heart rate up a little bit, you're doing that stuff, you're actually then, and that comes from the blue zones, as I say. Those people are not, it's like Sardinia, they're not athletes. What they do is their village is steep. They're walking uphill. They're exerting themselves a little bit. So important. We look at the community and relationships amongst people, which is, again, a vital part of it. Time management, and it's funny you say time management. What has time management got to do? If somebody's got that, they've generally got pretty good discipline, they've set goals, they're doing things with a purpose, not just doing things and flowing down the river. And then what we do as health coaches as well, we help hold people accountable. And a very big part of it as well is this thing of overcoming obstacles, because that's obviously one of the biggest things that is out there. And one of the other areas, I don't know what we've had. Sorry, I've clocked it back. What have I done? Okay, so the last thing, we look at overcoming obstacles, but then also with health coaching, what we're doing is we're not counselors, we're coaching you. And so we work over a period of time, and what we're doing is you know the best answers, you know the best solutions that you have, and if we get you to put those down and get that into place, you're actually far more committed to doing what's happening at the end of the day, and you will do something because it's what you want to do. It's not what I want you to do, it's what you want to do. Sorry, I'm going to try and get this back. Yeah, we basically pretty much at the end. I just want to finish the last two. That's basically where I'm trying to get to. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much what we do as health coaches, and what I have that I will offer you as well is that's my email address. There are business cards if you want. I'm happy to do for anybody if you want. I'll do a free assessment In that, I'll give you a fair amount of tips. If you want to do that, just email me. And I'll also give you the basic blood sugar balancing guideline, which is a really nice little sort of 20-page thing, which gives you a lot of the basics and a lot of the principles that I've spoken about and lots of ideas. And, that's something pretty much, I think, just to get people started at the end of the day. But as I say, the importance of the coaching is this whole thing is that, we go to your goals. It's what you want at the end of the day, and we help you achieve those things. And you guys know, an individual knows where they want to head at the end of the day. So, yeah, pretty much that's what I've got to say with that whole lot. And I think we've sort of pulled it just into the time. It's always the important thing, I think. But yeah, I'm open to questions. Anybody want to ask anything, or there's things that you didn't quite get to the speed I went through that?
How many times a week may I eat KFC? I'm sure everybody wants to know that. Everybody wants to ask the question.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody does, Jansi, and it's kind of what I'd expect coming there. But the thing is, if you eat that every now and again, or any of those things, it's like how often do we eat sweets and how often do we do all these other things? I can't tell, and that's another, it brings up a very important concept though, because a lot of people think we're going in a diet. It's not a diet. What we're doing is it's a lifestyle. It's a way of eating. And when we look at that, we try and look at getting you to eat things that you enjoy. I'm not going to determine what I do is I try and take people along a journey when I do that. And I say that's what it is. It's a fun journey to learn these new things to eat, but what you want to enjoy eating. I will guide you to eating things that are healthy along the lines of things that you will enjoy eating. Because if you don't enjoy eating it, you're not going to do it. And that's why it's so important. So it's a good question asked in a different angle.
Machines that are, do you think they'll come having these little machines, or
to measure it?
More intuitive way of, yeah.
Look, there are different ways. Over in the UK, there's already big projects that they're doing that they actually have these things. They apply it to you, and you can read it. Those we can get them here. They're just very expensive. The way I did mine initially when I started off, just to get a better measure of it, and I've been doing it eating in this way for a long time, but to get it, hone it in carefully, I got myself a glucometer and just did some initial checks to see what I was going and where my different foods, what they were doing, and then understanding that, I can now bring it back in. So it's an easier, and you've got to think about it from the perspective as well. How expensive is those things? When you're talking thousands of rands in terms of those little units, and you can get them. Yeah, you can get them. Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Now we got all the knowledge. Wisdom is actually acting on your knowledge. Nah.
Yeah.
Now, any tips for some self-whipping? How do we get the self-control in?
The thing is with the self-control is you've got to I think at the end of the day do things, as I say, that you enjoy doing, because if you don't, you're not going to do it. And also that it's within reach. One of the big things that I try and do with a lot of the stuff that I do is make it practical. So in other words, is it going to be, are you somebody who cooks or enjoys preparing meals? If you do, then I'll help you with things like that. If you're not, I need to find ways around it to give you easier things to prepare that are healthy. But you've got to do things. That's human nature at the end of the day. And the thing is, where a lot of this comes in is we try and get some quick wins with you. We help people in certain things like losing a bit of weight, just improving a bit of health. Try and get those things going, and you'll find then people are more inclined to stick to the program. Okay, and a lot of the tips are simple. There are a lot of very simple things that we can give you to do that will make a big difference.
So I'm interested in the 20% familial influence
Yes.
into some, what do you call it?
Talking about the epigenetics, yeah.
So is the ultimate goal to be able to change familial, like high blood pressure, over a period of generations? Like, I'd be interested to know how many Okinawans have high blood pressure.
And the thing is, it's because it goes back again. Look, all of us have within us the genes, the cells. I mean, all of us have within us the risk to have cancer. It's whether we switch the gene on or off, and that relates very much to the environment we live in, what's happening with the air around us, the toxins we've got here, what are we eating, all of those things. So that's the thing we can control. And maybe over a longer period of time, because we're doing those things, will improve and the genetics may change. but you're still going to have to make sure that you eat in a consistently good manner. And
so in the health world, is there a notion about switching that switch off? Like you trigger your genetics?
quite a lot of the you get, particularly in cancer, you get these things called targeted therapy, and they are using those kind of theories behind trying to do that. And the problem is that when you're using unnatural means like that, very often there are different influences that come in, and you get things that you don't want. I mean, how many medicines have you seen that you find that there aren't side effects to it? It just doesn't happen.
But a side effect of high blood pressure, if it's familial, can be death.
Can be. But
So
it's a combination of things with high blood pressure, is that, and high blood pressure is one of those insidious things that you don't pick up really, that it's there until it's really too late. So you make sure that you're eating properly, you make sure that you're looking after your stress situation in particular, and those things will then generally come right. That's what will, so even cholesterol, a lot of people say, well, it's, people say, well, you can't eat to change it. There are a lot of things you can do eating that will change it. I know for a fact there are lots of things that I've used. I have cholesterol of down to 4.6. My brothers, both of them, are effectively being put on, statins, and that brings with it its own problems. I'm very against those things. Yeah. Yes.
Along that map, I noticed most of those blue zones were along the equator. Is there a reason for that? I mean, is it in them like further north to south?
Yeah, it's a very good observation, but I can't tell you if that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Look,
It's the moderate weather. It's not severely cold and not, it seemed like very tropical.
Yeah,
I
then,
think things grow there easily as well.
but then in some of the areas where they're not and it's very cold, and like in Ikaria, Greece, where they pretty stony ground, they don't have a lot that can grow very well, but they find things, and they've learned to do that. They've learned to have things that can that are healthy for them.
Maybe it grows there because they there.
There we go. Yeah.
With the blood sugar, just on a normal basis, how often do you check it?
If I look at me at the moment, I don't really check it unless I pick up that there's something happening and I can feel it. You know what I mean? I know my body pretty well. And what I did initially is that I would just check it on a daily basis with the different types of foods that I was eating.
Like half an hour after, 1 hour after or something to see?
At least half an hour afterwards, yeah. And just to see what it's doing, to get a measure of it, and then it becomes, you will know what does and doesn't do it. And very often you'll feel it. It's like I can eat a bit of white bread, I can tell you, I know literally half an hour I'm done for, because I'm not used to eating it anymore. It's just something I don't do. Yes?
What carbs are okay for a talking about gut biome? Gut bio, what do you call it?
You're talking about it's the microbiome, it's gut health and the microbiome. There's a whole range of things. I mean, mostly you're looking at it's a lot of the raw vegetables and so on. I mean, things like sweet potatoes. There's a whole range of vegetables that the beans are particularly good for that kind of thing as well. Any of the legumes are pretty good, but there's a whole range of things you can eat for that. Eva's got more oil in it, but it does have some carb. But it's one of the best things you can actually use as well. It is of the best oils that you can get. And if you want to cook, the best oil you want to get is get Eva oil. It's the best, believe it or not, for high temperature cooking. Any? Okay.
Cool. I think we call it there. Are there any other questions? Burning questions?
I just want to ask you, when you eat sugar, you tend to want more sugar. You go like in an unhealthy cycle.
Yes.
But with you that have lived so long eating healthily, are you more sensitive to like unhealthy stuff? If you would eat like a piece of bread or something.
I am very much, and that's why I say, I've often gone to meetings where they've got put stuff on the table, and there's really nothing that I can actually eat. Because, nothing I want to eat, let's be, and the thing is, if I do eat that stuff, I do feel it very quickly. And it's because your body's got used to it. And that's the thing, is you condition your body for different things. And that's why they talk about the different types of diets that you have, the paleo diets. And are we getting the different areas? Do we get our energy from the sugar, from the protein, or the fats? The fats are actually of the best or highest, but you've got to train your body to do that. And that's what happens when you don't use that. Your body goes the other avenue to use those things to provide the energy. Okay.
Cool. you, Bobby.
Okay. Again.